Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
I have a special ritual for my online meetings. Some people know it. Yeah, so this is a ritual to make every online meeting great.
Okay.
My name is Max. I'm an entrepreneur, created 3 bootstrap profitable companies. Last year, I created many studio projects. One is 7 months research on venture studios. I record podcast interviews with studio founders. We held already 4 conferences. 3 were for venture studios. One was for VCs. And this conference is for family offices. We have a community of venture studios, one WhatsApp free community of more than 1,000 studio stakeholders and studio operators and enthusiasts. And we have a closed community called Venture Studio Family. Last year, I set a lot of relationships and connections to many venture studios around the world. And this year, I will set a lot of relationships to family offices. This is why we have today the Family Office Online Conference. And I'm very grateful to my team, Masha, Annie, Olga, Roman, and Maxim for bringing this together. So I will be the listener today, and we'll also learn some interesting hacks, insights from family offices and all people related to family offices.
So Max mentioned growing his family office network, but he's also growing his own family. There are exciting news. Last week, Max became a second-time father. So we all want to congratulate him and give all of the best wishes to Max's family. Max also mentioned our closed P2P community for venture studios, Venture Studio Family. In the community, we hold regular calls to exchange experiences on various topics, for example, attracting founders, revenue streams, fundraising, and many more. And also for the members of our community, we organized industry-specific meetings and a meeting with investors, which I will tell you a little bit more about later. If you've been to our events before, you know that we try to make them not only insightful, but also fun. And we have a great tradition of taking a group thematic photo all together. This time around, we're focused on pets. Since it is a family office online conference, we figured it would be really fitting to celebrate all members of our family, including those with 4 legs, feathers, or fins. So stay tuned. We will do this activity a little bit later. And now I want to give a word to our first moderator, Roman.
Annie, Daniel, Peterson, and I are thrilled to host this conference. I want to thank all of you for coming today and for being active before this event. We have over 700 registrations from family offices, VCs, venture studios, and others. And for today, we have 10 amazing speakers who are connected to family offices in different ways, and they will provide us insights. The second speaker is August Fern. August has spent over 20 years helping family offices and venture funds to invest in climate tech companies. And today she's a partner at Baruch Future Ventures, which is a climate tech focused family investment firm with a background leading 10 IPOs, 8 M&As deals, including 10 unicorns, and now they have 57 portfolio companies. August will speak about impactful early stage climate investments. So August, you're welcome. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you for everybody that has your camera on, because I'm not fond of talking to a black screen, right? So it's great to see. Thank you for everybody there. I did put together a couple slides here that I will throw up just to provide a little more info. Today, you know that last question that Kathy was asked, or the second to last question about the ESG focus. That's kind of what I'm here to talk about. We are a family office based in San Francisco, and we completely believe that you can both do well and do good at the same time, that there is no distinction between, am I going to do good things or am I going to make money, that you can absolutely do both. So let's start with, as Roman mentioned, we are really concerned about the changes we see in the climate. There is no question the climate is changing. You've read the reports, you've seen the news reports, you've noticed, around your own house that we have drier periods and wetter periods and colder periods and hotter periods, and things are changing. If you look at this graph, is a great graph that shows over the past 80 years where these average temperatures have gone. And you can see that last year was an outlier, and look at this year is on track to be even hotter. There's no question that man has made changes to our environment, and the earth is, we're feeling an impact here. And we're seeing more and more extreme weather events. We're seeing, like I said, drier periods, wetter periods, bigger storms, lots of challenges. And what's even scary here is that we might be at the point of no return. Have we made so many changes that it's going to be, the earth is a very large environment, and the earth will adapt, but it might be well outside our lifetimes, right? Maybe it takes the earth tends to adjust in millennia, not in decades or in a human lifespan. So there's a lot of things that we're really concerned about in the environment, and a lot of damage that we've done, and we are really concerned about this. But this is not, it's not all doom and gloom. I'm coming here from Berkeley, and we have an office in San Francisco, and we're right as part of the Silicon Valley. And where we come from, we look at innovation as our path out of these challenges. I'm going to be there. We absolutely believe that taking our best and our brightest ideas, taking the talent that we're seeing now, the people that are putting their lives and their resources and their skills into solving these climate challenges, that they are going to make an impact. Now, this is not like there's no silver bullet. There's not one single change that we can make to make everything suddenly work. This is really an all hands on deck issue. We look at the broad spectrum of climate, everything from more efficient energy systems or batteries or hydrogen production or transportation systems, or how do we produce more food using less chemicals? How do we just like everything? What about taking some carbon out of the air? How can we just remove carbon? How can we stop putting so much carbon up in the air? We look at everything and all of these companies that are somehow impact the climate. And we firmly believe this is the approach that will take care of us. I should introduce us just a bit. Baruch Future Ventures is the family office of Tom Baruch, and Tom is a very long-time venture capital investor. Back in the 90s, he formed CMEA Capital, which stood for Chemical and Materials Enterprise Associates at the time. So always with a deep tech, solving hard technology problems. And CMEA had 7 different funds under management, lots of IPOs, lots of successes, lots of successful acquisitions. Baruch Future Ventures is his legacy. It is the chance that we have now to use the skills and the connections and the experience and the success in investing in early stage companies to make impact in the world, directing that impact, directing those resources towards solving our climate challenges. This is the doing well part, or the doing good part of our goal. We are absolutely investing in companies that are going to make an impact in the climate. Personally, I met Tom back in 2006 at CMEA Capital when we were founding the energy and materials team. Again, focusing on how can we improve our energy systems and how can we look at the new material innovations that we're seeing. What do these new technologies enable? But like I said, we're not just do-gooders. These are not philanthropic dollars. These are not charitable donations. We're not just kind of throwing money and hoping it does good things. We are doing this to make a return as well. And we think there is absolutely no reason why you can't both invest in meaningful companies that are making an impact, a positive impact for our world, and earn strong financial returns at the same time. So we split our funds up into 2 funds. When they first started doing the family office, we looked at a couple things outside of climate, but really since 2018, everything we've invested in has had some sort of climate focus. And we're pretty happy with the financial returns that we're seeing here. I thought I would pull up some of our sample portfolio companies, because if you talk to any investor, we always love to talk about our companies, because that is why we do this. I'm lucky. I get to spend all day long talking to entrepreneurs with ideas for how they're going to change the world. There's so much creativity, there's so much energy, there's so many people working on this problem that it gives me every confidence that we are going to solve our climate challenges using the whole host of technology advances. These companies, I picked these companies here because these are ones you may have heard of. But we typically invest in very early stage companies. And by early, I mean early, like pre-seed or seed. When the company is just kind of getting started, we are often the first capital that goes into the company. And that's because of this, these decades of experience investing in this field. We have a lot of value to add to the company and to help them on this path. But so all of these companies, even though now they may have raised hundreds of millions of dollars and they're off to do great things, and you might see them in the newspaper, when we invested in them, they were early stage companies, and we've helped them to get to this point. But in addition, these are ones you may have heard of. But I'm super excited about some of our more recent investments, that the companies that are still early stage. A couple maybe have raised their Series A. They're really early. For example, we have an investment in a company building a new hydrogen electrolyzer stack. They kind of started from a blank page and designed it to be cost effective and low cost and energy efficient. And we really see this as like a step change in the pricing of producing green hydrogen. And we're really excited about what they are working on. Another company that's one of our portfolio companies just closed their Series A last week. And this company is using biological methods for rare earth separations. Now, you may know that the vast majority of the world's rare earths come from China. And not only does that mean we have some supply chain challenges with all the source being in one location, but there's also the process tends to use a lot of really toxic chemicals, fluorine gases, and really chemicals you don't really want around. So our portfolio company has biological methods that should be not only more sustainable and less toxic, but also lower cost and more flexible, so that we can do it in the United States or in other countries as well and disperse our rare earth supply chain. And then another company, because again, we love to talk about our companies, another company we have investment in has technology to dramatically reduce the amount of copper in electric vehicle batteries. You may or may not know, but a typical electric vehicle has 200 pounds of copper wrapped up in the battery. Not only, that adds a lot of weight to the vehicle, but it also copper. We have some limited supplies of copper. And this company that we've invested in has technology to totally reduce that amount of copper, which not only reduces the demand on copper, but also makes the vehicle lighter and therefore more efficient. So, I love to talk about companies. This is what we do. It's so exciting. It's so nice to know that we are able to invest in these companies that are doing positive things for our environment. There's one more thing that we do that is a little different. So not only this is our main job, but in addition, I mentioned before that Baruch Future Ventures is Tom's legacy. And part of that legacy is to help deploy as much capital to solving these problems as possible. So what we do for that is we work with a select group of other institutions, which might be family offices, might be corporations, might be even other venture funds that want to invest in these companies, have that desire to do good by investing in these companies, and we help them to do well at the same time. We use our deal flow, our diligence experience, our connection to the top experts in this field, and we help them to develop a portfolio of direct investments in early stage companies, not always as early as we are involved, but like seed stage, Series A, Series B, and help them to make a successful portfolio of investments in the climate space. And that's, I don't know of anybody else that does that. So
yeah, sorry for interrupting, August. Thanks for your pitching. We have now a Q&A session, if you don't mind. Your pitch was very engaging, and we have interesting questions. So what do you think about the negative or positive impact of AI computing to climate? The question from Jesse.
Yeah, that is an interesting idea, right? Because what we are directly doing, because we don't do AI investments, but we are looking at data center cooling technologies. We are looking at how can you reduce the impact of running these AI server farms, because there is no doubt that those are huge consumers of electricity. So how do you partner these data centers with green power? How do you cool them more effectively? We've looked at all kinds of ideas of to make them more efficient. So that's how we look at solving these challenges.
Yes, and maybe another question, a similar question. So how do you measure impact from your companies in a comprehensive way? So if you invest.
Yeah.
So
this is an interesting question, because I know there are lots of methodologies and ways to try to account for the actual CO2 emissions averted, and we don't quantify our emissions, because one, we're a small family office, and so we don't have any LPs that we need to report that to. But also, we know we are selecting from the get-go that we are only looking at companies that are going to have a substantial climate impact. And also, I have done some of those calculations, or I should say attempted to do some of those calculations in the past. And I know that there's a lot of uncertainty. There's not a lot of standardization. There's a lot of variability, and a couple of assumptions can really change your output. So instead of stressing about if it's 0.8 gigatons or 1.1 gigatons, we know that all the companies we are invested in have a positive impact on the climate.
Yes, thank you. And the last question, because we have 1 minute left. So, do you invest in climate tech funds or only in startup directly?
We do direct investments, because that is what we know, and that is what we are experts at. We actually work sometimes with climate funds, and we certainly partner with climate funds all the time to co-invest and lead syndications. But we do direct investments because that's what we know, and that's what we think we do really good at.
Okay, understand. So thank you, August. Very interesting. And now I will give a word to Annie. She has something interesting ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you, Roman, and also thank you, Kathy and August, for your amazing, engaging presentations. So now let's have a little break from knowledge and create some memories. Remember, I told you about a group photo with pets, so I suggest let's do it now. If you are at home with your pet, please bring them to the camera. If your pet is not with you now, you can prepare a photo of them on your phone to show to the camera, or you can even use it as an avatar on your Zoom. But if you don't have any pets, you can also show us your plants. For example, Maria already is showing one in the background. So plants can also be our babies. So while you're bringing your cats, I want to take a chance and introduce you to my cat. This is Peach. She is 1.5 or 2 years old, and I adopted her from the street 4 months ago. She is originally an Istanbul street cat, but she chose me as her owner around a year ago, when she started constantly coming up to my windows and asking for food. So I couldn't help it and took her home, and now she's really a part of my family. So I see many people are already ready. So let's hold our pets to the camera and hold them for a good 20 seconds so that we can take screenshots of all of the pages. And don't forget to smile, please. So 3, 2, 1. Yes, we don't have that many, so I think that's enough. Thank you so much. You can let our pets go, your pets go. Thank you. So now is the time for our next speaker. I want to introduce you to Mike Siegel. Mike launched 8 startups and had 4 exits, including IPO. He was a founding GP at 500 Startups Fintech Fund, which made more than 80 pre-seed and seed deals in fintech startups. After 35 years as a founder, VC, and corporate advisor, Mike now serves as an advisor and business coach to founders, fund managers, and corporate executives, as well as investor, speaker, and fintech expert. Mike will tell us about Venture Studios as an asset for investment. Mike, hi, please. The stage is yours.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you. Let me just bring up my deck here. So I'm one of those people that works with slides, and when I give a presentation like one of these, what I really like to do is sort of look at what people much smarter than me are looking at and try and curate that into a narrative for you. So that's what I'm going to do today. This is pretty dense, but at the end of the deck, I have a reading list. And at the end of my time, I will post a link for you to be able to get the whole presentation, including the reading list. So I won't go into my background too much other than to say I've been in and around startups for 35 years, 7 startups. I was anticipating an exit when I gave my bio. It should happen tomorrow. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Done a ton of investing, primarily in fintech companies, and now I serve as an advisor to both funds and founders, including Max and Niches, as they think about how to deliver more capital into the studio space. For what it's worth, that's my dog, but he's not back from day camp yet. Okay, so what I want to share with you is that as both an entrepreneur, as an investor, and as someone who looks at innovation in financial services, what I see in venture studios and their associated funds is a material evolution in startup investing. That effectively it presents a risk-reward profile, which is very different than what we're used to in early stage venture investing, which is pretty much characterized by either a company is going to have an IPO or it's not really going to be worth anything to the LPs that invest in funds. It still might be very valuable if you're doing direct investing in startups, but it's the venture value chain where studios are making a change, a difference. Because I've been in the industry so long, I like to present just a little bit of history. And the concept here is really an evolution of something that started with one of the first studios in 1996, and not the first studio, which is this idea of platform VCs, which is a investor is going to aggregate a bunch of services to reduce the capital requirements and increase the velocity of the startups they invest in. First round capital was really one of the first micro VCs to do this, and later A16Z. And what we have learned over the vintages of funds that have created platforms is that they tend to outperform those funds that don't have platforms associated with them. And what I want to draw your attention to on this slide is the net IRR of no platform of 4.1 versus 8.4, or in this really great series of vintages, 22 versus 33. Now, research about studios is still pretty early, but when you look at some of the research that you see is startup studios that are aggregating even more assets, and I'll go into what that's about in a moment, are really outperforming funds. So for those of you that aren't familiar, basically what a startup studio is an institutionalized co-founder of startups. They create this platform. We'll go into what the assets are in a moment. They find entrepreneurs that want to build solutions. They deliver these assets and almost always funding to those entrepreneurs. And they engage in a process of finding product market fit and then scaling the startup. And they're always there with the assets that they bring to the table, as opposed to accelerators or incubators or VCs who sometimes bring some kinds of assets. Usually those assets are in the form of network as opposed to hard assets or hands-on solving the problem. So this, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a quick overview of a startup studio business model where you can see the kinds of assets that are brought to the table by studios as they go down this path of trying to build funds. And that includes ideation, it includes having team members and or building a team for an entrepreneur that they find. They bring capital, they find capital, they are both in equity and in intent, a co-founder, and they have a variety of other services. So if you are someone that wants to invest in startups or in the startup ecosystem, what studios bring versus the traditional model are a number of benefits. And I'll go through these with a couple of examples, each at a time. So Snowflake is one of the biggest successes to come out of a studio. It went IPO in 2020, and it was incubated in Sutter Hill Ventures, a venture fund in the Valley, who had assembled a startup studio for engineers. And you can see their entry price was 17 cents. The first VC that came in as a seed investor got a price of 97 cents. And 8 years later, you had an exit at 245 was the IPO price. One of the ways that you get a lower loss ratio is as you have these assets, which are designed to do a lot of experiments and find great founders to work on these ideas, you're reducing the cycle times and the energy necessary in order to test ideas. So this comes from some friends of ours at Builders, which is a Netherlands-based startup studio, where you can see that for any given cohort of startups that they're going to invest in, they might have 1,800 founders with ideas, of which they select 240 to vet over the course of 10 weeks. Then they shape those into just 6 business cases that they want to invest in over the course of another 6 weeks. And then they invest to create the products and continue to grow. And then those companies, many of them will spin out and go raise traditional venture capital. So this idea of we've got in aggregate about 6 months is a lot shorter period of time to vet a whole lot of ideas that might work at this moment in time for a whole lot more capital efficiency. If you think back to this this initial studio, Idea Lab, that started in 1996, and you compare it to how the venture industry has done, Idea Lab in their history has had 5% of their companies become unicorns, and a total of 70% have some kind of material outcome for the investors versus 1% for the startup ecosystem. Then there's this idea that studios are highly capital efficient. This comes from a studio, OSS, that's based in France, and their thesis is innovation in manufacturing. And the assets that they've assembled, that they bring to the table for every single startup that they start, include relationships with factories representing 1,700 operational sites, a code base that any company they start gets to use that deals up front with integration with manufacturing systems and cybersecurity, and a giant database of all the facts and figures that may go into building a manufacturing software company. Then there's this idea of speed to liquidity, which basically you can see here, you're about 2 to 3 times more efficient in raising the valuations of companies that come out of studios. And that's not just at the early stage. Max and his team did a bunch of research released earlier this year that shows, in fact, time is compressed. That time to liquidity, which is always the problem with family offices interested in investing in venture versus the other asset classes they're used to, is that time compression really gooses the returns. Startup studios also, as institutional co-founders, typically they take both founder equity, common equity, and when they invest, they take preferred equity. So with that locus of control at early stage, they're also able to exercise a lot more control than when you have a diversified group of investors over a long period of time in terms of engineering exits. Then the final and most important thing is this, is that serial founders are now putting their time and energy into founding studios and into working through studios that both reduce their risk and improve their returns. When I was investing early days of fintech, again, I did 88 investments in 28 months in 26 countries. and I have a top decile performing fund. What we saw at that moment in time, which was 2010, was that as a result of Bitcoin, as a result of banks diluting trust, you had millions of engineers and entrepreneurs pouring into fintech, and fintech has outperformed pretty much every other segment of venture over the last several years. We see great founders pouring head over heels into working on or in studios. And so as an investor, you want to follow that talent. That's all I've got. Hopefully I know it was very fast and I can take some questions, but, and I will share the reading list. So let me stop the share and hear what you've got to say.
Thank you, Mike. It was really interesting how clear you made it. And we have actually many questions to you in the chat, and we will see how many we have enough time to answer. The first question from Artem. He's considering the dynamic shift in technology and consumer behavior observed over the past few years, what are the key sectors you believe will define the next wave of successful startups in 2024?
Yes. Sorry. So my expertise is fintech, and I'm very bullish on we're entering a new phase of that. I think probably the most interesting thing that I've seen recently, and this is not to say go invest in AI, but rather think about this shift. The data I saw recently that said that over the last 20 years, S&P 500 companies have the number of employees you need to generate $1 million in revenue has gone from about 10, 20 years ago to just over 1 today. And that's before we see real adoption of AI for process automation and other leverage. So I think a really interesting thing to think about is where are there still lots of people involved, and how will you apply AI plus process automation plus who knows what in order to get more efficiency in those industries. So I think a big shift here, there are a couple of people who have used this, I don't want to take credit for it, is to say there's no more tech businesses, there's only tech-enabled businesses. And beyond that, if you want to ask me about about fintech, I can answer that question. Beyond that, I can't.
Yep. Thank you. We have the next question from Renee. How are family offices generally viewing venture studios as an asset class? From my perspective, they offer a lot on the de-risking side, particularly given the current macroeconomic environment. How do family offices feel? What challenges or questions have you heard from family offices about investing in studios?
I'll have to turn that around, but I think, there's classes of family offices, and I'm going to break them into two. I'm going to break them into three. One is family offices that look at venture capital and the 10-year return horizon and say, that stuff that kind of return profile is just not interesting to me. And so they don't really look, in my view, into studios any more than they looked into venture funds or maybe startups. Hopefully the risk reward profile will pull some more of them in. The second group is there's a group of family offices out there who have deep experience in some sector that is not startups. And they've said, with the assets that we have around the table, we may be able to create our own startup studio. And that group of questions then goes, what does it take to make a successful startup studio? And I would say very strongly that if you don't have serial technology founders as part of your startup studio team, you're going to fail, because you may have built an amazing food distribution business that started with your grandfather, but the terms of competition and the need to be tech-enabled has changed so much that if you don't have that startup technology DNA who have built hyperscale companies, you're going to have a problem. And then the third group, who are really much more sophisticated, are understanding that the questions that they need to ask, and I'm hearing, is So how do you define defensible assets on which you can create a successful startup studio? Do you need to be verticalized? What are you doing? What's a startup studio doing in terms of aggregating that talent, which is analogous to asking a venture fund, how do we know we're getting all the best startups given our thesis? So it's things like that. And then I think there's another layer when you look at some startup studios are actually trying to build unicorns and others are not. They're trying to build private equity companies. And so you need to peel back those layers. The final point that I'll make across all of this is we're still in very early days in startup studios from a structural standpoint and a management fee standpoint. So in venture, we know the typical venture deal is 2 and 20 on the fund. If you're invested in a fund of funds, generally speaking, it's 1 in 10, something like that. Startup studios tend to be all over the map. We've seen some where they're saying, well, we're going to give you 2x on your money in a shorter period of time, and then we're taking 70% of the carry. I mean, it's really kind of all over the map. So what I hear from from family offices in this regard is, so what's the right deal? What's the right structure? And my reading list will point you at a whole bunch of answers to those questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike.
It's a very long-winded response. I'm sorry.
It was really insightful. And also thank you for the answers to the questions, and have a good luck with your exit tomorrow.
Thank you very much. And I will now drop the link to this deck in the chat for everyone. You can copy and paste it. It's DocSend. Have a good time.
Amazing.
And
thank you.
Thanks again for your time this afternoon.
So before we proceed to the next speaker, I want to make a short announcement. As we mentioned before, we run a closed community for venture studios. And for the members of our community, we are organizing a meeting with investors. So if you are an investor interested in venture studios or interested to learn about venture studios, we invite you to join us and get acquainted with our studios inside the community. So please fill out a short 10-second form. Now you should see the link in the chat. And we will reach out to you and invite you to the meeting. And now I'm excited to introduce you to our next speaker. This is Suki Bhullar, co-founder and CEO of Scopal. With over 20 years of experience in building and leading businesses, Suki co-founded Scopal LLC, which is a family office-backed venture studio that uses proprietary capital to build ventures, capability, and make investments into other venture studios. The studio now has 4 ventures in the portfolio and 3 investments into other studios at DD stage. And Suki will tell us about his family office-backed venture studio.
Thank you. If I'm sounding a bit bunged up, it's because I was really sick last week. So not fully recovered yet, but hopefully the voice is not going to be too annoying.
Thank you.
So thank you. And thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody for joining. I too have created a couple of slides, so I will share them. Hopefully everybody can see that. So for me, today's sort of talk and focus is really looking at an insider's view of what a venture studio looks like when you marry it with the capability of a family office. Just put that there. So just to give you a bit of a snapshot on sort of how this whole thing came about, because I think it's sort of important as I go through my other slides to actually provide some context. So I've spent 24 years in a very specific vertical, which was sort of recruitment tech and ed tech. And in that sort of entire time had been spent building my own ventures. In about 2015, I decided that I would move away from building sort of services-based businesses to a tech-based platform. So I sort of started that journey having really no experience in actually building tech platforms. Started that off in 2015. Started to build that platform out. And then in around 2019, I was contacted by a gentleman called Ian Slater, who I actually had no idea who he was. It was purely through LinkedIn. Turns out that he was the principal of his own family office. So Gloucester Circus is the family office for Ian Slater. He and his father had basically built the family office over the last sort of 23, 24 years. They sort of set off building businesses. They didn't really have much intention of building a family office, actually. But Ian's background was a proprietary trader. He'd worked for all of the big banks in different parts of the world. His dad was an engineering tinkerer, is how Ian described him. And they had sort of both started down their own paths. Ian had built his own proprietary trading business. His father had built an engineering business. They exited, they pulled some money together and decided that they would just go and buy property and keep trading. So over the 23 odd years, they've built a significant property portfolio, which consists of, I think, something like 8 hotels. There's farms, there's about 15 farms, there's 26 pubs, and then there's a whole bunch of commercial real estate. They trade the financial markets, they provide market making services, and their LPs into about 30 something venture funds. So they had sort of, I guess, played on the fringes of tech and startup, but not really had sort of ever immersed themselves into that world. So when Ian and I met in 2019, he became very interested in the platform that I was building and wanted to invest. And then that conversation sort of started to evolve over a period of time. And I think one of the presenters earlier talked about the importance of building a relationship. And so we sort of started our dating life off on a particular platform that I'd built. But then as we started to discuss more and more ideas, I think Ian's interest peaked in actually having the ability to go and build more ventures, basically. And neither of us really started this conversation on the basis that we would go and build a venture studio. It actually had never even sort of crossed our minds in any of the conversations we had. And then one time we sort of sat down and thought, actually, it does appear to be a venture studio we're looking to build. And I think, Ian sort of understood what that meant from an investor point of view. I think their background in having built proprietary trading businesses meant that his appetite for risk and the associated return was really high. I'd always wanted to just go and build ventures. So the notion of Scopal came around, and we decided that we would actually go and pursue this thing together. So I guess the question that was always on my mind at the early stages of the discussions was, and not really having much exposure, if any, to the family office world. It's been a rather steep learning curve for the last 2 and a bit years. So I wanted to sort of zoom out a little bit. And I guess, we've talked about the number of different types of family offices, but equally there's lots of flavors of venture studios. So, bringing the two together on the surface, I think seems like an obvious, straightforward, easy step. But I think the reality is actually quite complicated, because I think generally the profiles of a family office versus what a venture studio is all about are very, very different. So if you look at the venture studio side, typically very high risk, high reward, but very high touch, and obviously very, very early stage, early to the point of sort of pre-seed. The founder may only have an idea, and that's basically what we're going to be sort of, building from. And then I think if you look on the other side of that bench, you've got lots of different flavors of family offices. So Ian's is a single family office, but there's multi-viral, hybrid, outsourced, legacy, global, specialized. And I think they all have very different risk profiles. They all are in different stages of what they want to invest in, why they're investing, and where they're investing. And I think that the challenge, although we never experienced this challenge, because I think if you took Ian's family office, it's single family office, it's first generation. Unfortunately, Ian's father passed away last year, which now means he's the full principal of the family office. But his enthusiasm and desire to go and build and grow that family office, I think, is part of the catalyst for his desire to go and build a venture studio. Even though the venture studio actually doesn't sit within the family office, it sits outside of the family office. The founder of, or one of the founders of the family office, is obviously a co-founder with me in the venture studio. And I think, the drive and the commitment and the mindset is really aligned with what sort of I believe is the type of mindset you need to have to go and build a venture studio. So even on the venture studio side, there are lots of different iterations and permutations and derivatives. There are lots of different ways in which they model themselves. There are lots of different ways in which they structure themselves from a percentage point of view in terms of what they take of the startups. So I think all of that really needs to be considered if we're looking at trying to marry a venture studio founder with a family office. And I think even in that family office scenario, is it active investment, or is it sort of arm's length investment into the studio just for funds? In Scopal, Ian and I are very, very hands-on. He sort of effectively repositioned himself in the family office so that he can only he only needs to sort of spend 10% of his time on the family office. But then in the Scopal studio, he's basically committed to 90% of his time. So what have we ended up building? I think what we have is fairly unique amongst the the venture studios out there. So on the right-hand side, we have the ventures we're building. So the Rec EdTech Venture Studio is our own Scopal Venture Studio. We're very vertically focused. So given my background, the focus for that for our own venture studio is the recruitment and EdTech vertical. We've got 3 platforms we're actually building in there, and each platform basically addresses a different user need or problem within that industry stack, starting at sort of Spark RFX is our platform that's connecting procurement. Kaya is the platform that is connecting recruiters with talent. And the third platform, which is Kettler, is addressing the lifelong learning. So as part of the strategy for the studio, we own 100% of that particular studio. We own 100% of the projects running within that studio. There is also another project called Spreeve, which connects buy-side investors with founders looking for capital, with the underlying sort of thesis being around having really, really diligent due diligence in that process. So with all of those ventures, we own all of them. And then Scopal is making direct investments into other venture studios. So we've basically identified a number of verticals that we're really interested in: fintech, deep tech, digital product design and build, insurtech, and health tech. So we're at due diligence stage heads of term stage with the product design studio. We have been in discussions with an insurtech studio. We're talking to a potential founder for a health tech venture studio, and fintech and deep tech. We actually haven't found anything there yet. So, but with each studio, Scopal will invest into the parent company, typically taking anywhere from sort of 25 to 35%. That capital is then deployed by the venture studio to go and build, or rather sort of validate ideas, build out POCs, get the product to basically MVP stage. And then for the follow-on funding, we're actually in the process of building out a dark pool SPV. So that dark pool SPV will be basically attached to Scopal and accessible by any of the venture studios. So Scopal does the pre-seed seed into the studio. Then the studios can call upon the funds from the dark pool to actually deploy into the ventures that they feel are the winning ventures, and help build and scale them out into market. We're very sort of low volume, low frequency. So each of the studios we'll be working with will have founders that are very strong within their own industry sector, but the studios aren't looking to pump out more than sort of 3 or 4 high quality ventures a year. And then on the other side of that coin, instead of creating a shared service, which I know a lot of studios do, we've decided to actually build services businesses which can be leveraged by the studios themselves, but also non-studio related businesses. So we're building out a branding and creative agency at the moment, which will do digital marketing as well, a legal services business, accounting, and also a talent business, effectively a recruitment company. So with these ones, we will go out and find co-founders that want to go and build it. We will fund them, help them scale, and obviously feed them into our own network of contacts and our own sort of venture studio portfolio.
Suki, we have only 1 minute left for your presentation.
Last one. So just key takeaways for me, I think. Some of the key learning was, making sure that the principal understands what their role is going to be in the studio, or what role they will play as a co-founder. Ian and I are obviously very aligned on that. Obviously understanding what sort of growth mode the family office is in, understanding that, not all family offices are high risk, high return risk profiles. So pick the right family office if you're going to go down that path. It's not just a business relationship. It is, a partnership in its truest form. So I think you have to be able to get on with that co-founder, especially if you're co-founding with a family office or a principal from the family office or a family member of the family office. I think it's really important to make sure that the goals are aligned. I think that there is a natural tendency sometimes for power to play a role in all of these, and I think it has to really be a collaborative approach. Be honest with the founder. They should be honest with you. I think there should be honest and open communication. And I think you've got to make sure that whoever you're co-founding it with has got the passion, the resilience, and the grit to go and basically endure the journey, because at the end of the day, it's building startups, and startups aren't easy to build, even though everyone on the outside seems to think they're lots of fun. They are a pain. That's about it, I think.
Great.
Yeah. So.
Thank you so much, Suki. So unfortunately, we have run out of time for your blog, but there are a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe you can also answer them in the chat later. Yep. But now need to move on. Thank you so much again. So now I would like to introduce you to our third moderator and also speaker. This is Danielle Patterson. Danielle is the CEO and Managing Director of Family Office List, an online investor database. Family Office List stands as the premier and most reliable resource for family office data and investment intelligence. It hosts a comprehensive database of over 4,100 firms with 50 new additions monthly. Stay tuned. A bit later, Danielle will share her presentation on the evolution of the family office sector and how it relates to the world of VC. But now Danielle is going to host our panel discussion on investment decision-making in family offices, featuring 3 more speakers.
Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you for that warm introduction. And thank you everyone for being here today. What an amazing crew. Like Suki, I was sick the past week, so I do apologize for my voice. I hope we don't have any coughing fits. I've got my cough drops here. But I'm honored to be moderating today's panel. We have three very accomplished speakers. We have a lot to pack in only 20 minutes. So I am going to let them introduce themselves and ask a series of questions. Our topic is the investment decision-making within a family office. And I see we have Ken Goldman, we have Adi, and we also have Kevin. So everyone's here. I think I will go ahead. I'm going to start with Ken Goldman from sunny California. He brings a wealth of experience as a former president of Hillspire, which was Eric and Wendy Schmidt's family office. So I'd love to ask, can you provide a snapshot, Ken, of the Schmidt's family office investment philosophy and how it's evolved over time? And I also know through speaking that you do a lot of your own investing as well. So feel free to shed insight on your own investment philosophy as well.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about both. I actually just moved myself. Actually, it's funny. I had the cough myself for like 3 weeks. Took forever. It's the most lingering cough I've ever seen. But anyway, just to be quick, I had a long career as a CFO. I ran as president of the family office for Hillspire, Eric Schmidt, for 5 years. Left about a year ago. As you would think, he runs, it's a very big fund. We did a couple of things. One is originally Chuck Chai, who manages it, only managed Eric's and family's money. Then we sent him aside, so to speak, or he wanted to go aside, so he could take outside money. And he now runs a few $1 billion, but primarily Eric's money as well as outside money. He primarily, we, how you want to say it, primarily likes large funds. Eric feels he has enough technology, so he doesn't do a lot of technology investing per se. But he goes into very large hedge funds, very large private equity funds, sometimes one-off investments. I would also comment on myself. When I left there, I'm on a number of boards. I also manage my own family office, which I labeled now Maya Capital. And I primarily do a lot of private equity and a lot of venture capital. The equities part of what I do is delegated to my folks at primarily Morgan Stanley that are local here and very, very well-known folks. But the thing I would caution about, and then I'll stop, is you see it over and over again. The amount of liquidity, returns of funds in terms of your percent of capital is very low, particularly in venture. But so I think it's a 10-year low in private equity as well. So I think the denominator effect that people talk about, the lack of liquidity, what's going on now, all kinds of folks are creating secondary funds, continuation funds, whatever term you want to use, to leverage debt, to create equity, to allow firms to raise new funds, given the fact there's been low relative exits in the last, frankly, 2022 and 2023.
Thanks for that, Ken. Great insight. I appreciate that. Interesting to hear, on both your experiences personally and working.
And I hope I don't have a coughing spell either.
Oh, I know. Hang in there. All right. I'd love to take things to Adi. Adi, I will let you introduce yourself briefly to the group. And if you could also share with us a snapshot of your family office's investment philosophy and how it's evolved over time.
Thanks, Danielle. Appreciate the opportunity to speak here on this panel. Global Holdings, allocator, the first 10 on the institutional year, the next called Catalina, building out the non-credit alternatives programs. Since 21, I am in the wealth management space, advising families as well as select institutions on markets. At the moment, focusing on specialty finance and real estate as part of the current income bucket, quarterly cash flow yield and focus strategies, and separately looking at total return for 3+ years to liquidity, private equity, venture, among the sectors that I evaluate on a more opportunistic basis.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, excited to hear more from you. All right, Kevin, saving the best for last. Let's hear from you. Can you give yourself a brief introduction to the crowd and also share with us a snapshot of your family office's investment philosophy and how it's evolved over time?
Absolutely. Just want to thank Danielle and the rest of the group for having me. Really excited to be here and be along with my distinguished panels here. Guest, I should say. I've been in and out of the family office space for about 30 years. I spent about 12 years at Merrill Lynch. I helped build their wealth management platform, which kind of morphed into their family office division. I left. I went to UBS, spent a couple years there in a management role. From there, I kind of took a little bit of a turn. I ended up getting a job at the New York Stock Exchange. Was there for about 9+ years. Had the international division, did a lot with Canadian, European, and Asian companies in terms of IPOs, getting them listed and, just kind of building the presence of the exchange in those areas. And from there, I've worked at a number of boutique investment banking firms. And I guess I would say 7 years ago, I ended up meeting a family office in Toronto. I ended up getting involved in a cybersecurity company, which was one of their portfolio companies, and just basically hit it off with them. Just really liked the group and the family. So I've been working with them for the last 7 years. I'm the chief investment officer for them. They made their money mostly in commercial real estate. They own a number of commercial buildings in downtown Toronto. They're also residential builders. They build 200 to 400 home developments in and around Toronto. They have an investment arm, which I oversee. It's very focused on technology. We have a whole tech team in Toronto. So we're very interested in investing in, I would say, later stage tech companies typically, although we have done some earlier stage investments. And for us, it's more of not just writing a check, but also bringing expertise to the table where we could help them build out their platforms. And, we've had quite a bit of success in that area. We're also very involved in defense and aerospace region as well. We work with a team of ex-special forces gentlemen that retired recently out of Austin. They go out and vet defense companies, typically private companies, and they, show us the companies that they feel comfortable with. And then we end up investing and then co-investing with some of the other families that we're involved in our ecosystem. And then I just mentioned lastly, we started to really get into the impact space. We are looking at some funds that are focused on female-led companies. So we're actually evaluating some of those funds as we speak. And that's about the summary. I mean, I could get into other things, but I don't want to take up too much more time.
Well, thanks for that, Kevin. Really fascinating to see each of your unique approaches. And it really just kind of goes to that whole quote, once you've seen one family office, you've seen one family office. Each of you has a different area of expertise. And I'd love to hear, we'll start back at the top with Ken, but really just elaborate on your asset allocation and what portion of capital, if any, do you typically allocate to venture investments?
You're asking me first? I would go back. I am a couple comments. One is I'm a risk kind of guy, is why I've done 3 startups and on a number of boards that have been startups. So we're just talking about technology, but I've grown up in technology. So, some people are shy from risk. I've enjoyed risk and both in my career and my investing. So as I started getting heavy into venture capital in the late 90s with my second startup with Kleiner Perkins and John Doerr. And ever since then, I've had a very, very heavy allocation in venture capital. I added a lot of private equity in the last 10 years. One of the things that was a benefit to me, and I would just comment this, when I worked at Hillspire, a lot of funds would come to see me to get to Chuck because I was very approachable, if you will. And so a lot of times it comes to me, and it didn't make sense. We'd talk to Chuck, and it didn't actually make sense for Hillspire. But I would ask. One of the comments I now make to everyone is, if you don't ask, you don't get. And so I would find, instead of going through, which to get into private equity, I used to go through a number of brokerage firms like Morgan Stanley, B of A Merrill, whatever, JP Morgan. And I found I was able to get in directly by just asking. It's funny, I met Carlisle at a family office conference in New York that I'm associated with. And I was talking to the head of IR there, and I asked him if I could get into the next fund, and he said yes. I would say so I have a disproportionate, over half of my net worth is in illiquid investments, which is good and bad in many cases. But I would say this, many of the, particularly private equity, but even venture capital, but I say many private equity, Blackstone, Carlyle, you can just name them, Thoma Bravo, are now addressing what they call the ultra high net worth family office groups. They realize there's trillions of dollars that have been put into these family offices through money you made, through technology, through financial services, whatever. And so they're going through they're coming directly to access those funds. Sometimes you get in directly. Sometimes they use a firm called iCapital, which I don't quite understand 100%, but it's in a way that they can leverage, so it makes it easier for them to allow. So I have a lot into private equity. I probably actually have more now in private equity than venture because the funds are larger and I find them less volatile than some of the venture. But the comment I make to everyone here is to my knowledge, all the major private equity funds now are going after the funds that they see in family offices and ultra high net worth folks, and setting up organizations, IR groups, whatever, to address those funds. That's the big message I would leave here for everyone. I see a lot of people in this call, but I would leave that. And it's the old saying, you don't ask, you don't get. Sometimes you'd be surprised if and the other thing I would say is everyone has these minimums, but you'd be surprised if you say, how about if I do this, which is below the minimum, how often they say yes.
Wow. Those are great takeaways.
So don't think a minimum. Very rarely are minimums hard minimums. I would tell you that very rarely.
All right, I appreciate.
Particularly if they find that you have some you're of interest to them.
Really great takeaways, Adi. And this is just kind of I hate to go right in the same order, but I figure it makes sense with our given time. But what is your approach to asset allocation, and what portion of capital, if any, do you typically allocate to venture?
Our family has been investing in private since 2014 in two ways. The first was co-investing alongside Catalina as part of my contractual arrangement on an overage basis in opportunities that fit our portfolio. After Catalina IC approved the commitment for the operating company's various balance sheets. That provided our family access to institutional funds without paying what I call a retail fee overlay, even though we wrote a retail size check, because I was writing the institutional minimum or more for the institutional investor. Fast forward 10 years later, my current model at Divino is replicating that access to institutional quality managers, primarily funds. Occasionally, our family invests in early stage funds and direct, including venture funds. It's increasingly an area that I'm spending time on now. Over the past decade, we haven't seen many instances like we did in 22, when two ends of the barbell reset, rates as well as venture on the far end of the risk curve. We think that presents many interesting opportunities in the venture space to enter at potentially more attractive valuations. But frankly, the majority of our capital is in that current income bucket I mentioned, quarterly cash flow yield focused minimum, across specialty finance, real estate, and potentially some hedge fund strategies. We think because of the rate reset, getting income currently outweighs waiting 3+ years for liquidity. And we're at an inflection point, I think, where it becomes very interesting to look at those types of situations. So that's what we spend most of our time on, Danielle.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm a visual person, so I like the analogy of the barbell. I'm going to use that. All right, Kevin, over to you. What's your approach to asset allocation, and what portion of capital, if any, do you typically allocate to venture?
I think we probably have about 30% in the private equity venture bucket right now. And I would say it's probably skewed a little bit more towards private equity. So I think probably I'm thinking around 12% venture is probably sort of in the zip code where we are. So we kind of have a little bit of a unique sort of approach in that we've built companies from the ground up. So we're operators. I mean, to give you an example, we built a cannabis company, and of course, being in Toronto, I mean, Toronto was sort of ground zero for cannabis when it went federal like 6 years ago. So everybody was sort of on that bandwagon. But we built a cannabis company, and we ended up selling it probably 6.5 years ago for about $300 million, and we got very focused because we thought it was easy. And at the time it was, because you could raise as much money as you needed to, because it was the euphoria. Fast forward to today, I mean, it's totally the opposite. It's so hard to raise money in cannabis right now, right? But anyway, from there, we ended up getting one of the first dispensary licenses in Toronto, and one of the first 25. And we ended up building a chain of retail dispensaries. We have about 25 locations now in and around Toronto. So we got a really good sort of perspective in terms of building companies. We also built a LED lighting technology company that is very focused on a vertical farming niche. That company's probably doing 50 or 60 million a year in revenues, and we think that we can grow that to 150, 200 million over time. But we started that from the beginning. So when we're looking at venture funds and we're looking at the managers, we kind of have a really sort of good idea what it takes for an entrepreneur to be successful, right? So we kind of use that lens when we're looking at the various venture capital companies that we're looking at. And most of what we're doing these days is through funds like Adi. We do rely on other sort of sources to sort of give us like their view, other family offices. We have a lot of different relationships on the street with different firms. We're always looking for something unique. Obviously for us, the biggest thing is capital preservation. For us, we don't want to lose money per se. So therefore we're willing to take less risk, which everybody's like that. But I guess what I'm saying is, that's extremely important to us. We're a first generation family office. And, if you look at the statistics, only 25% of the family offices make it to the second generation. So you have to really be focused on capital preservation, in our view. I think it's just a lot of it has to do with the ecosystem. And, as an example, I see Adi a lot at many different events. I just saw him at a lunch yesterday.
You're everywhere, Adi.
So he's everywhere. But anyway, there's a lot of sharing of information, through this family office ecosystem, which is very, very helpful, because a lot of times the family will have access to certain things that you don't have access to, or relationships with another family office that may specialize in, whatever it may be, healthcare, tech. So that ecosystem is extremely helpful. And, that's what we try to leverage.
Yeah. Very true. I mean, I'm learning how tight-knit that ecosystem and how important it really is in doing the due diligence and vetting and, you know, sourcing the deals for that matter. My next question was really about venture funds, which all three of you have already really touched upon. So I'd like to kind of skip ahead, knowing our time is short, but to talk more about direct investments. Each of you kind of said you're gravitating more towards funds, at least in this current environment, but do you make direct investments? Are there these one-off? And if so, at what stage do you typically get involved? Ken, I'll start with you.
Yeah. And by the way, if anyone wants to reach me, you can just reach me on email or reach me on LinkedIn. But I do quite a few direct investments. I'm based here in Silicon Valley. I have a lot of friends. And so I get connected to a lot of one-off opportunities. I probably do one or two a month. I don't do large investments. I tend to do these relatively small. So that's what I tend to, be cautious on those. There's also certain funds I'm in that create SPVs and so if I'm in the fund, they may have an SPV in a particular opportunity, and so I might like that as well. So yes, I do them, but I'm selective. And I would say this, it's always trust. So if it's a deal I'm doing directly, it's because of someone I know or someone gives me a reference, so I know I can use that as some, comfort, if you will. If it's a fund that's giving me an SPV opportunity, I sort of look at the dynamics. It's really normally a growth opportunity. So I look at the financials, the valuation, and I say, can I make enough of a return that it makes sense? So if you can't make a very large multiple of your money on an illiquid investment, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense at all. Because you have to assume these are very liquid, particularly in today's world of venture.
I thank all three of you for sharing your insights and imparting, knowledge of how your individual investment strategies operate and just sharing more with us about the sector. It's really been a great opportunity to learn from all three of you. So thank you.
Really appreciate
it. By the way, yeah,
thank you.
I'm K Goldman 5 at Gmail. If someone wants to reach me, K Goldman 5 at Gmail. And I don't know if others want to allow you, but this has been great. Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Really, really appreciate it. Great forum.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So we have a special treat. I would like to introduce you all to our next presenter. This is Camille Homsey. Hi, Camille. Great to see you. I had the pleasure of meeting Camille in New York not too long ago. He is the co-founder and CEO of GRC Investment Group. So Camille is going to present to us the art of capital preservation and growth. And his single family office has a global portfolio focusing on commercial real estate, renewable energy, and waste management. But I don't want to take any of his precious time away, so I will turn it over to you, Camille.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I logged in an hour early today because we were mixed up with the daylight time. But happy to be here. Thanks to you and to Masha for inviting me and also for giving me an opportunity to select my own topic. After listening today, I owe the audience and you and Masha, if we ever convene again, to start from basics on family office, to delineate single family from multifamily, direct investment from co-investment, venture capital from private equity, and and from angels and others. It seems that from the line of questions, I'm looking there on the chat, that the audience have a lot of curiosity to learn about the space. But I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I did commit to capital preservation, and you know what? Let's do it. I thought I will pick the most difficult part of my job, but it's just a walk in the park. As we all know, that family offices, especially like ours, when you are a single family office, what delineates you from a wealth manager, with all due respect to all the wealth managers, those that I know and those that I partner with and those I want to meet. a patriarch or a CEO of a single family office is investing his money, his children's money, his siblings' money, his nieces and nephews and extended cousins, and those cousins once removed. Believe me. And they know where he lives, and they know what they cooked last night, and they walk in without a phone call. While a wealth manager is investing people's money, and you only know his email, and most of the time speak to the assistant, and when you speak to him or to her, can always get back to you with an answer. But if the person that calls you is your sister or your cousin or your sister-in-law, you can't say, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. No, she wants the answer now because she has money in the pool. Family offices, if they are organized as a family office or just calling themselves family office or they are a high net worth group, they do have various investments and they have different approaches and strategies. Those strategies have ruling factors. The size of the AUM is always important. The size of the asset under management, the total wealth that was generated by the first generation or by those second, third, and fourth that have inherited that capital. So the first factor is the origin of the capital. Now, for us, just with all transparency, our capital was generated in the late 50s out of oil and gas. So from there, the first generation relied on European wealth managers to invest their money abroad. Those wealth managers invested in their own respective countries, in their own respective capitals, if it was London or Amsterdam, or it was Zurich or Geneva, and they invested in commercial real estate. Second generation came in with a different education, educated in the West and in the United States, came up with other ideas. When I took over, I'm a big believer in diversification. That the more we diversify, we reduce risk, as you know, Danielle, and also for the audience. The fact that deciding what to invest in, how to deploy the capital, it is more of an art as it is a science, because you take in consideration the structure of the family. And if you do really have, like what we do, we have a full structure in a pyramid hierarchy shape of from the top to the bottom. In the top, we don't have one person. In top, we have an investment committee that comprises of 7 members. 3 of them are non-rotational. For those of you who are thinking, I am not rotational, and 2 others. And we have 4 rotational that we rotate every 2 years, elected by the family. The second row of the room, around the room, our second and third generation after us, they have tablets. They sit down to write minutes, and they will be quizzed on the meetings because we're preparing them to succeed us. And that's very important in a structure of a family office. I see August is smiling. That means August belongs to the same club. So give me. Okay. So deploying starts always with knowing what you want and what is the plan. Take an example, the boxer that went into a training camp for 3-4 months, prepared to fight someone. They showed him that opponent in size, in conditioning, in limbering, and then come into the ring. In the first round, he get punched in the face and he lose the plan. He sees stars and then go back to the corner, and the corner man said, what happened to the plan? When you are a family office, you must have a plan. I go on stage, I tell everybody, just like you said, Danielle, my core investments are commercial real estate and renewable energy and waste management. We are global investors, but our risk tolerance, the bar is very low. You know why? Because we also have other buckets that we invest in. We invest in fintech. We invest in cybersecurity. We invest into prop tech because we are in commercial real estate. We always we rely on the new AI improvements that can add value to a lot of the assets that we have. In renewable energy, I invest in almost anything that inventors can send my way. Why? Because even though I come from oil and gas, I know that the future is not oil and gas. But which future? That future is going to be more than 100 years from today. But in between now and those 100 years, we must work on clean energy. So we invest into renewables. We also invest into improving the drilling, the storage, the refining, and the transition and the storage of the fossil fuel, because fossil fuel is not going anywhere. And in addition, we also have developed since 2014 an overarching policy where we include in our conversation, not dictate, include in our conversation with GPs and with fund managers that we co-invest with them, the conversation of ESG as a tool and impact as an outcome of working on the tool. So when you hear ESG and impact, they don't go this way. ESG is the standards. And each one of those 3 letters in the acronym has a drop menu that goes down 10, 15 different items. If it is the environment or the social or the governance. So, but what is the outcome of that? The outcome is the impact. There is measurable impact we all thrive for, but measurable impact takes a long time. You know, just like it takes 9 months to deliver a baby and then 18 to get him out of high school, 18 years. Believe me, impact is the same way. I'm not saying impact should take 18 years, but I'm saying that impact takes time. And the measurement is always hypothetical until it materializes. I have few items that I like to share with anyone who is curious about capital preservation. You know, just like I said before, pay attention to what you want of a return on investment. I'm going to run through those bullets that I keep in mind a little bit fast in respect of the time. I also say, be cognizant of the cost of your capital. Do not use a lot of debt. Don't forget, capital preservation and growth. Capital preservation, you don't want to lose. Growth, because you want to keep up with inflation and you want to keep up with the membership increase into the family. Families overseas, they make more babies than over here. Here, I have families that say to me, Camille, our family is 35 people. Our family is over 250 people. And then when in a university in New York City, when I was addressing this, I didn't have 20 minutes. I had 2 hours there. And we have a video of that for you, Danielle. They said, how do you manage this? I said, that's why we delegate. That's why we have the pyramid. We have the investment committee, but then we have second and third tier of management, of analysts, and those analysts, they're highly skilled and well selected because we invest into different assets. Now, for a family to claim that they invest in everything is impossible unless you have trillions of dollars and not billions of dollars. That's why I limit the core to be identified to make it easier for those who today, after this meeting, or in general in my business life, to send me what I can pay attention to without wasting their time and also my time. I also want to say that always bring value. You must bring value because a family, in addition to capital preservation and also to making that possible impact, okay, there is also an arm of philanthropy that is core of the structure of a family office. When someone asked me, Camille, what is the purpose of a family office? I said, doing the good deed. How about that? I say, always you have to do the good. I say, you always have to do the good deed because this is residual capital. We have our own businesses in the region, in the GCC. So my main office is in Dubai, but all the surrounding countries, they do have, we have members that have their own businesses there. They all contribute to this pool of capital. But the individuals have their own philanthropies, but then the pool of capital has its own philanthropy also. We are very much involved into orphanages, into battered women, and also into Down syndrome cause on a global platform. That cannot change. You can't say, well, the new generation said, why don't we change our philanthropy? You cannot change your philanthropy. If you have a center that has 30 or 40 or 50 women that we knew they were at one point in distress, you're going to say, oh, the second generation changed their mind, so we are going to withdraw our budget from you. You cannot do that. Philanthropy is a commitment, and it's a long time commitment. When you take an orphanage, you're constantly having a new orphanage members coming in. Give me a signal, Danielle, when you want me to stop.
All right. Well, I want to hear every single minute. I'm hanging on your every word. I know it's probably.
I can sum it up and give you a closing statement that I really want to share with this beautiful audience that you have today. I think I covered a lot of the points, but here's something that rarely spoken of, where I like to dissect the family office wealth. And here it is. Family wealth comprised of two components. There are two prongs. It's not only the money, it's also the human wealth. We already spoke about financial wealth and the favored strategies used to deploy this capital. But in reality, the human wealth that is contained into the members of the family is as important and critical in carrying the legacy generation forward in financial wealth. You can lose the money, but you are not going to lose the members. If they are well prepared, the family will maintain the legacy. Families who aspire to avoid negative outcomes and to ensure long-term preservation of their families, as well as their wealth, should commit to the growth of their human assets, as well as their financial assets, and can designate a portion of their capital, whatever they can afford to do, to adopt assets, to dedicate those financial assets that can create a long-term development for those family members who possess the family's money. I mean, those that we are mentoring today to succeed, people of my generation, the money is theirs. They have to be prepared for it. And we must always remember, regardless of what generation we are, I'm the third generation in the family, but even those, my contemporary, okay, we know that today the sustainability of the family depends on preparing it to survive and endure after me and after all those, my contemporary, introducing the new members to the business from early age, from delegating and placing them in positions of decision making, training them, mentoring them, developing them. And I'll close by saying, in preparing the success of your family, instill knowledge and confidence and courage into those that they will succeed you. But here is the final thought: empowerment and not entitlement. Oh. True families are minimalists. Warren Buffett, he still talk about his house down in the Midwest, that it is 40 years old. He still drive a 1990 a US-made car. He did not go into the Italian and the English $500,000 up to $4 million cars. So those that they bring cars to family office conferences. They're entitled to do business. They're entitled to make a living, but I will not buy their cars. You buy a safeguard to put your family, and you always prepare your family to continue investing. And thank you for listening to me.
Wow, Camille, that was such an inspiring presentation. I wish you could see the chat. It is just overflowing with praise, your energy. It's no doubt your family office is so successful, being a third generation. Your insight into how you've structured it has been enlightening. And I love that you put philanthropy, at the forefront of what you do. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing with us all. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I hope next time you and Master give me 2 hours.
Yes, you deserve it. I'm going to find that 2-hour video.
I bring August with me and anybody else from the space, from the trenches, okay? People that closed deals, that sold deals. You listened to Adi before. I know Adi for many years. We've done business together. Today, he didn't say much about the real Adi. We have to bring him back on the panel. And definitely, I like to speak to them. I like to speak to the audience next time, adding to what we spoke about today or promised them, speak about the incubator bank that I created inside our family. Where we lend in the family because I want every member, boy or a girl in the family, to grow up as an entrepreneur.
I love that.
So that lending will keep them together, will keep them united, will hire each other, will do internship together. They held accountable. You do well, I will write off some of the money we extended you. You do bad, we take back your company. So they know that there is
program, Camille.
They know that there is oversight. There is oversight. Thank you, Danielle.
Well, I have a feeling this will be continued. There needs to be a volume 2 of this conference because you have so much wisdom to share.
Thank you, Danielle.
Yes.
Thank you.
I am going to be doing just a short presentation here to wrap things up. And I'm just, honored to be here. I have learned so much from all the speakers. So thank you for those that are still here for bearing through to the end. I'm going to share my screen and share a few slides. In my years working in the family office sector, I've witnessed a remarkable increase in the number of family offices making direct investments and gravitating towards venture and impact investments. There are a lot of changes and I'm excited, but before I dive into these, I want to take us back in time to look historically at both the evolution of the venture capital and the family office sectors. Looking at some of the historical landmarks that have shaped the industry, we can then talk about what we're seeing today and what we think the future holds. Although the term family office has become all the rage and we're hearing it more and more, they've actually been around for hundreds of years and date back to Europe in the Middle Ages, where royal families employed managers to oversee their wealth and estates. Of course, over time, the functions and the definitions of a family office have evolved, and there's lots of gray area, of course, and they vary country to country, but we really started to see a defined emergence of more family offices during the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries. The 20th century, we saw the rise of the modern family office, particularly in the United States, as industrialists such as the Rockefellers and the Carnegies made their fortunes. And in the mid-20th century, there was a pivotal moment in the formation of venture capital. We had visionaries that recognized the potential of supporting emerging startups, which led to the establishment of pioneering venture capital firms such as the American Research and Development Corporation, the ARDC, and Kleiner Perkins. Of course, then there's the legendary Silicon Valley in the 50s and the 60s. All the area around Stanford University was buzzing with tech innovation, and you had venture capital firms like Sequoia Capital right in the thick of it. With the 70s and the 80s, we saw big institutional players like pension funds, university, the endowments, and insurance companies all jumping on the VC bandwagon. The late 90s, of course, brought the dot-com boom, which was like the Wild West, with startups popping up left, right, and center. And of course, venture capital was the lifeblood of it all, keeping these startups afloat. But just as quickly as it rose, the bubble burst in 2008, leaving many overvalued companies high and dry. The market crash also changed the way that family offices invested, and they started bypassing traditional managers and investing directly and increasing allocations to alternative investments. The years to come are often referred to as the easy years because interest rates were low and everyone seemed to be making money. So here you can see the way family offices are allocating to alternatives, and suddenly you can see that they are new players in the startup game alongside traditional VCs. Although the U.S. has been a playground for venture capital, you can also see that 50% funding was allocated to startups last year. During these challenging times in need of alternative capital sources, startups are starting to realize that family offices can be a great source of long-term funding. They're seeing family offices as strong partners who can provide the support they need for sustainable growth. So moving on, let's look at the family office sector today. There are roughly 15,000 family offices around the globe, which currently hold approximately $10 trillion in assets. That's a massive number when compared that there's only $6.5 trillion globally in the entire hedge fund sector. And what's bigger than this is that we're about to experience the largest transfer of wealth in history. It's estimated that approximately $8.4 trillion is being transferred from the baby boomers to the next gen over the next 20 years. This has massive implications on how companies will be financed in the future and how family offices are going to disrupt private equity and venture capital industries. But here's the thing. While the industry is growing exponentially, the current model doesn't work. Only 25% of family offices make it to the second generation, 10% make it to the third, and only 5% make it to the fourth generation. It's a highly inefficient model. Generational wealth transfer is complex, but we're hoping that we can change by providing more transparency, access to value-aligned investments, and technology to streamline all these complexities. So we're at an inflection point in the evolution of family offices as we see them becoming more efficient and less fragmented. As a result, we see them increasing direct investments. This is a trend that will continue to gain momentum over several decades. VCs and family offices are at the forefront of tech, revolution, innovation, globalization, market expansion, evolving investment strategies, and new investment classes like crypto and blockchain. All these things are resulting in more collaboration and co-investment. If family offices truly want to invest at the same level as top private equity and venture capital firms, they're going to have to become more accessible and open to exactly what they are looking to invest in. This is the core of what we do at Family Office List. We curate our database of family offices, actively allocating, and create profiles for each firm depicting their values, origin stories, and investment preferences. Part of what we do is create an ecosystem of partners. We're actively scouting technology solutions, and recent conferences discovered a pretty remarkable tool that I see being a great solution for family offices, founders, accelerators, fund managers alike. I think a lot of you can benefit. It's called Hatcher Fast, which stands for Funds as a Service Technology. The founder, John Sharp, a really nice guy I recently got to meet in person, developed Fast to solve many of the pain points he experienced in venture capital investing. He's built a top 20 VC fund with a focus on sustainability and climate tech. And the first year he and his partner launched the fund, they were able to invest in 5 companies. Now with the AI and technology that they've built, they invested in 230 companies last year, all with the same small team. So it's pretty remarkable. Their technology pairs with data providers like us to successfully match founders with well-aligned investors, be it family offices, venture capitals, accelerators. What's great is it's a free tool for founders and has a really helpful pitch deck assessment and scoring system so that it can truly help guide and position founders for success. It also allows family offices to efficiently manage their deal flow, streamline back office operational reporting, and fund administration. I could literally spend an entire 2 hours webinar talking about this technology, but I do see the time, so I want to make sure that I get through. In today's landscape, like fast, are becoming indispensable for accelerating startups. And I'm more than happy to help anyone who's interested in learning more get in touch with the Mature Advising. So please feel free to reach out, send me a note after the presentation. But let me get to my last slide so we can have some time for Q&A here at the end. Basically, I want to conclude on a high note. We're seeing a shift in focus among both venture capital and family offices, where it's not just about making money anymore, it's about making a difference. And that's what I'm really excited about. It's where impact investing comes into play, and investors are putting their money into companies that are doing good in the world alongside generating a profit. It's a win-win for everyone. So I'll close on that note and thank Masha and Max, all of the organizers, for including me in today's session. Thank everyone who stayed till the end, and open things up for Q&A.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for your presentation and also hosting the panel discussion. So unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A because we have one more amazing speaker, and I want to tell everyone to hang in there. Don't go anywhere yet. I have one more speaker to introduce to you. This is Renan de Villiers. Having strong experience and expertise in factory operations, Renan co-founded a technology company, exited it in Series B, and launched OSS Ventures, which is the investment firm and startup studio based in Paris. In 4 years, they launched 20 startups, achieving 25 million ARR, and their solutions are deployed in 1,700 factories around the globe. And having recently closed this second fund, primarily with family offices, Renan wants to share with us his learnings on how to raise with family offices and all the nuances involved. Renan, hello.
Hello, thank you. Thank you so much, Annie. It's very hard to be the last speaker after so many great speakers and inspiring speakers. I try to tell you about our story at OSS Venture. And so as a former consultant, I am legally obligated to have some slides. So here we are. Can you see my screen? Yes, you can. All right. So I just want to tell you a bit about OSS Venture, but more importantly, Max Pug contacted me speaking about you raised a fund and you raised money on a studio primarily with family offices. And so let's share our experience. So about OSS Ventures, just to tell you about the market that we operate in, please look around you. You are probably in a room, and in that room, about 40 to 60% of the value add was done in China. It was manufactured in China. Everything physical comes from a factory, from the world of operations. That model that got us there, basically creating things in very distant places and then importing all of that things, it's coming to an end. Climate change is happening. There are geopolitical tensions. And so the world of operations is changing, and it's changing forever. The fact that the world of operations is changing forever has a secret component to it. The secret component is software. When you go to any factory, a regular factory in the world, when you buy $100 of product, you are probably buying $4 of software in the product. If you're buying a Tesla, it's $15 of software. And so software ate a lot of the world, and it's eating operations too. Moreover, operation is where it's at because the modern challenges, climate change, social challenges that we have will be solved with hardware and hard technology. So just a bit about me. I was an operations guy. I was a factory director. I was a McKinsey partner. I was a supply chain director. I always worked in operations. And then I switched to tech, and I created a tech company that I was lucky enough to exit at Series B in San Francisco. So I had the opportunity to live through the San Francisco like life cycle, raising big money, doing big growth and everything. And then I said, okay, now I exited. What do I do with the money? And so I just wanted to be an investor in tech for operations, but I couldn't. And here is why I couldn't. Operations is 25% of the GDP. It's 0.7% of the VC money. And so a lot of startups are not operating in the world of operations, and for the wrong reasons. It's very hard to penetrate. It's very hard to understand. And so not a lot of truly tech people are going to operations. And so that's why 4 years ago, I created OSS Venture, which is a venture studio, a fund specialized in getting software companies for the operation world from 0 to 10 million ARR. So the very first part of the journey. Been going well. We've been creating 20 companies. We are deployed in 1,700 industrial sites. We have about 89,000 users, daily active users, and we are up times 8.3 on the multiple on cash. So yeah, it went pretty well. And we really tailored how to build, how to scale, how to do software companies for the operations world. And so we think that we are building a unique team able to go from 0 to 10 million. We've been funding the journey 20 times and looking at the different parts. And we started with the builder, pre-product, pre-revenue, very building things. And then we realized that we needed a fund to get them to the next stage and to co-invest with other funds that were investing in startups. So we created a fund more because we were following the startup that we were investing in. And so far it's been going well. And so the venture builder that you see here is up 8.4, and OSS Continuity, which is a continuity fund, is up 2.11. So we are now raising the next fund, which is a continuation fund of 50 million, and we already have more than the majority of the commit of that fund. And so how did we fund this? So here is something that I discovered because I was not familiar with that world. I was just a VC-backed founder. What I discovered is very simple. We are in the early stage of understanding the studio asset class. The words are important here. We are in the early days, so nobody has all the answers, and I would be lying to say to you that I have all the answers. I don't. We think that studio is an asset class. So why is it an asset class? It's an asset class with a portfolio. So it's not a startup. And for example, in the case of OSS Venture, it's a portfolio with very de-risk assets because we are very operational in getting there, and our survival ratio is 60%, which is way higher than any early stage fund. But it is a different asset class than a pure investment fund or VC fund. And so looking at all the comparable structures, Y Combinator had a deal with Michael Bloomberg, the founder of Bloomberg. And Michael Bloomberg said, okay, I'm going to cover your expenses and give me a third of the equity that you take in the startups. And so Michael Bloomberg has actually a third of all the first batches of the Y Combinator startups. And so that's how they found how to finance Y Combinator. So Turtle Ventures were founded with founder money, and then they took external funds in a dual structure. So it means in another fund, a continuation fund that has a risk-reward profile that is different from the pure builder. The founders, now known as Exa, took a similar path with founder money because Thibaut Ezier was an exited founder, and then created a dual structure. So that's let's say the first wave of that very different, very particular asset class. That's how it was. In our case, so we have a structure and we have the venture builder, the first continuity fund, and the second fund, builder, continuity, and renaissance. Our funding journey was that I had to create the funder with my funds. I could do that because I was an exited founder. And so I first financed the structure with my funds. After 2 years, TKO Capital came to the capital and funded the GP, so on the top structure. And then for the continuity fund, TKO Capital reinvested, and we had an anchor LP which is one of the oldest industrial families in Europe, and 3 family offices. For the next fund, Tikehau Capital recommitted, the Anchor LP recommitted. We had a bank and 11 family offices. And so let me tell you a bit about the journey of understanding how to fund the model. We had 260 initial leads. In total, we had 700 conversations in roughly 1 year. We had 19 commits and 89 fund 2 commits. So commit for the fund after. The total process was 7 months. So here are our learnings. The institutional capital. So the banks, the pension funds, they said, we are okay to go to fund 2 when you de-risk the model. The family offices, there was that very clear distinction. All the money would go through when there was an industrial background, because they understand the thesis, they understand what we are trying to do. And all money without industrial background was very low hit ratio. And so we don't bother them anymore. In terms of new money, we had extremely high go through. I think the new money still run by entrepreneurs. They understand what we do and they get what we are trying to do, which is to have very hands-on operational capital that is not private equity. In the case of Tikehau, our first, it was the founder's money. So it's not every day you run into a billionaire that is willing to commit and fund your entire journey. But that's what happened in the case of OSS Ventures. And for the bank, it's a very entrepreneurial bank, and they were interested in the studio. So on the right, we had a very interesting data-backed way of looking at it. We said, why are you interested in investing in OSS Ventures? Or why are you interested in considering an investment? And so thesis was first. The model was second. The third was the management commitment in the fund, because as an exited founder, I committed in the fund and in the GP. So the alignment of interest was very high. The team was only number 4, so I don't know what to do about that. The impact, so having impact on the blue collar world, was a very high important topic. And the risk reward ratio was seated last and in less than 20% of the cases. What's more interesting is that, as you can see, when there is no investment, the thesis is very, very less important for them, and the model is less important for them. So that's what we understood. And as a closing remark before taking questions, here is my personal feeling after 700 meetings. So those are my data points. I personally think that the model is being built. And I think that family offices, being entrepreneurial capital, they have a pivotal role to play in the structuration of the studio asset class. I think they are the ones that would make the studio asset class emerge, as they did for venture capital. Institutional and big pools of capital, they won't do it. They will follow once the model is proven successful, exactly like the VC model. And for us at OSS Venture, it means that we are extremely proud and grateful that we are partnering with former entrepreneurs who understand the value creation model and families from the world of operations, and sometimes both, to embark on that journey of structuring the studio asset class. And so, yes, that's our experience, and I'm glad I could share it with you. Let's take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Renan. A really impressive journey, and really OSS Ventures is a great example of a successful startup studio. And we're really excited that you joined us today to share your experience. There is a question here in the chat by Rahim. He also said, I love the YC Bloomberg example. How challenging was it to explain the studio economics model to potential LPs?
So it was changing. It was changing on a scale from 1 to 10. I would say a solid 8. So it was quite challenging. the thing is, and this is also the difference between like kind of new money entrepreneurial family offices, they sit down and they try to understand with you. And so, for example, the initial time spent on the model is very correlated to the investment at the end. If the initial time spent is 1 to 2 hours and we really get into the model, they understand that it's a new model and that we are trying to build something and it's an ongoing creation, then they are much more likely to invest. And so that's why I talk about entrepreneurial capital. For the big asset manager, they have those boxes and they want to put you in a box. For now, studio is not a box. I am very much trying that in 5 to 10 years, studio asset class is a box, much like venture capital is. But for now, it is not. And so one has to partner with family offices who are willing to understand the model. The good thing is it has a very, very high return for now. Past performance is not predictive of future performance, of course, but for now it is. And so family offices who get it, they're really excited to build the model with us.
That's really inspiring. Thank you, Renan. So if there are any more questions in the chat, I see also Ashok is helping you answer some of them. So you can also look through them if you want a little bit later. So thank you again. And I want to thank all of our 10 incredible speakers today. And thank you to everyone who joined and especially stayed until the end. We really hope that you gained insights, fresh perspectives, and in-depth knowledge about the world of family offices. I remind you that if you are an investor interested in venture studios, we would like to invite you to our Investor Day to meet with the studios inside our community. So you will see the link in the chat here. And if you're interested, fill out this very short form and we will contact you very soon. So we are now finishing the conference, and according to our tradition, let's all turn on our cameras and microphones. We want to see all the faces and hear all the voices, and also take your pets if they're somewhere close to you, also to show to the camera. Mine is already in another room. So let's all say thank you to our speakers and also say goodbye. So let's go.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Much
Thank
love.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.